We're sorry that you no longer need it, or want it, or even cared about here. Machines can do a better job than you, and this is what you get for asking questions. The unions agree sacrifices must be made. Computers never go on strike. To save the working man, you gotta put him out to pasture. Looks like we have to let you go. Doesn't it feel fulfilling to know that you, the human being, are now obsolete, and there's nothing in hell will let you do about it? Super's good food. We make a good meal. How does it feel to the shit out of ass and throw in the cold like a piece of trash? We're sorry, you just have to leave. Unemployment runs out after just 6 weeks. How does it feel to be a budget cut? You're snipped, you no longer exist. Your numbers been purged from our central computer, so we can read the facts and sweep you under the rug. See our chart, unemployment's going down. If that ruins your life, that's our problem. Soup is good food. We make a good meal. How does it feel to be shit out of ass and thrown in the cold? To interrupt, but it's against the law to jump off this bridge. You'll just have to kill yourself somewhere else. A tourist might see you and we wouldn't want that. I'm just doing my job, you know, so say uncle and we'll take you to the mental health zoo. Force feed you mind-melting chemicals till even the outside world looks great. High-tech science research labs, it costs too much to bury all the dead. The mutilated, disease-injected surplus rats who can't be used anymore, so they're dumped with no minister present in a spiraling corkscrew disposal unit, drowned in the stew and flushed away on chain. We don't need you anymore. We don't need you anymore. Super's good food. We make a good meal. How does it feel to shit out of ass and throw in the cold like a piece of trash? We know how much you like to cry. We joke about it on our coffee breaks. So it pays the voice for you to have a nice day. If a wonderful world is made just for you. We're rats. We human rodents chuckle. At least we get a dignified cremation. Yet, 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, it's time to get up and go to work. Imagine what they teach us, traveling for free. Imagine what they give us, no heroin and speed. Imagine what they carry you back and beat up your ass. You're the one who dragged your hair, and now you drag it back to the Hellnation. 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 Communists, stop the people. Despair. Empty hells, no one. Stop guilty, Hellnation. Hellnation's got no choice, what's the point trying to move? When this country is war, we'll die in the same boat. In this Hellnation, 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 Hellnation. Crime is, black people, if you help no one, you're guilty in Hellnation. If you help, you're guilty in this Hellnation. It's the only world we got. Let's protect it while we can. That's all there is, and there ain't no more. Hellnation's got the keys for the nuclear freeze. So the unborn kids have got the chance to breathe. Hellnation has to lay for the minimum wage. So kick out the murder when it stays to the train. And this Hellnation. Hellnation, Hellnation, Hellnation. Brothers, black people, if you help, you're guilty of Hellnation. It's a scary kind of illness to design a place like this for pain. The town's an endless generic mall of video games and fast food chains. One by one the liquor houses are bricked up back to jail. Instead I had to move before the rats move in. This could be anywhere. Could be anywhere. Talk to them, stick to your own friends, they're not unkind. But now there's lots of fights. For many people I know, come of age takes a bitter ride. Can't create so they just destroy. Come on, let's set someone's dog on fire. Empty plastic culture runs down where the eyes of wars are now. Spreading the kind of gangs who thought we left behind. This could be anywhere. Could be anywhere. Everywhere. Could be anywhere. Could be everywhere. Could be anywhere. School of taking sides along color and uniform lines. My dad's gone and bought a gun. He says he's fed up with the crime in this town. This could be anywhere. This could be everywhere. This could bringing home these weird-ass friends, like the guy who fires blanks his TV with Kojaks on, or the guy who shows up his time machine to his 16-year-old daughter's friends, whose answer of pride and hope is being in the police reserve. This could be anywhere. Could be anywhere. Could be everywhere.
and love each other. And while you're busy hugging in the streets, Enemy crickets found a game to play. Stick your neck out and trust, it'll be chopped away. Shoot me through your lock the door, so rifle through your second doors. Line my pockets, stiffen some beats to the cows. Come home to me. To me. All for me. Oh! Deep in back in here, we go winding through your brain. Down like Orange Harvey, spreading up to a bed. My brain gets worse when you find out they lay eggs. And no one in all of Borneo can hear you scream! Scream! I'm going blind, it is light. I'm going blind, it is light. Going by, made it lunch. Turn on, tune in, pop out, drop kick, turn in, tune out.
Another rainy morning, nibbling at the market, bartering for food for another day. Rifle shots ring out behind the crumbling buildings, executions have begun. Sprawled in the square today, broken bodies, lives that get clean in your first and quick. Rifles in their pockets, feet off the clothes, where a siren you wash out the blood. Run, my little brother, run to the chicken farm. Opportunity is calling. You might even find a watch. We're going down to the chicken farm. We're going down got a plan you wait and see. I smuggled in this flap in the dash I sliced in my thigh. I hope I'm there to join with us and put the pieces one by one in this time. We go shaking to the field to time for all day to the views and cover and minds. By hand, the shiver at the deck is stiffened for the worst. If the pirates come around, we might as well be dead. We're thrown in the sea, a butchered if we're women, all in the name of gold. I'm put in a land with barely missed a hand, gets me the tongue of Yankee hospitality. My kids at school get beat up to the tune of both people go home. Sliced without a shade from the breast of our homeland. Our new world tries to spit us out, but a child is a chicken farm. We're going down to the 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 chicken farm. How about them hogs? Right! You're in the night for rivers, we got just a pet for you. It's a way you're forced to act to survive our schools. Make a whole lot of bubble and sports. Walk tough, don't act too smart. Be a mean machine and no one let you get ahead. Jock-O-Rama, save my soul. Under the thumb of the beat patrol. Future of America is in their hands. Watch you roll over my head. The balls. Can't rally in the holy temple and you're forced to go. Masturbating mass with a favorite religious code. Cheerleaders yell rah-rah team. But the rocker parade the prime beef. When archaeologists dig this something in the land for cry. Jock-O-Rama on the brain. Redneck about driving me insane. The future of America's in their hands. Watch them roll over our heads. The balls. The star quarterback lies injured, unconscious on the football field. Looks like his neck's been broken. Seems to happen somewhere every year. His mom and dad clutch themselves and cry. Their favorite son will never walk again. Coach says, that boy gave 100%. What spirit! What a man! But who cares?
Game's over! Let's go get wasted, man!
To the 7-Eleven!
To the liquor store!
Let's party all night!
And party some more!
sewage was filled in all my car. Don't worry about it, son. We were that way when we were young. We had all the skills to make a damn good businessman. And hook 'em, horns, Jock-O-Rama, semi-soul. We're under the thumb of the beef patrol. Future of America's in their hands. Watch roll over our Niagara Falls. Jock-O-Rama, that's the law. Come get the bites of the beef patrol. The future of America's handed to them. Watch roll over Niagara Falls. The hour belongs to America's best built goods. Here come the four-wheel drive for standing through his sides. Got your good blacks, tractor ties and rich mob drivers. We couldn't find a chick to sit in the middle, so we drink ourselves sickly out the windows and the glass instead. We are the Goons of Hazzard. We're a fight on your TV. We run down bikes and hitchhikers, 'cause we don't get off the tree. We're the vigilante heroes of the tough guy flicks. Flashing punks and bums and bags with our baseball bats. No gear to blow away in the woods today, so we go to Oroville and shoot a black kid down. A waste demonstrators in Greensboro instead. We are the Goons of Hazzard. Gonna fight on your TV. We leave you without to look good, 'cause we know get on. Stop free. Yeah. The local papers paid us up to be big heroes. Billy Father and Chamber of Commerce want to stick you ties. The stolen Gestapo keeping your town clean. Get a shave, give a pay, or it's a strike breaker. Maybe you'll make tax squad for the LPD. We are the Goons of Hazzard. We're a fight on your TV. We leave you in our food of good, 'cause we don't get up. Stop free. Hooray!
talk like I'm way down on Quaaludes. I wear a satin baseball jacket everywhere I go. My job is to help destroy what's left of your imagination by feeding you endless doses of sugar-coated mindless garbage. So don't create, be sedate, be a vegetable at home and thwack on that dial. If we have our way, even you will believe this is the future of rock and roll.
MTV, get off the air!
How far will you go? How low will you stoop? To tranquilize our minds with the sugar-coated swell. You should grab all the pain and the prelude sedation, making sure nothing's up to the imagination. MTV, get off the MTV, get off the MTV, get off the air. MTV, get off the MTV, get off the MTV, get off the air. Get off the air. See ladies features from the Muppet Show, shake their tits and their dicks as they lip sync on screen. It's something I don't like about a band that always smiles. The other times are off for some schmuck who doesn't care. MTV, get off the MTV, get off the MTV, get off the air. MTV, get off the MTV, get off the MTV, get off the air. Get off the air. Get off the air. Get off the air.
And so it was, our beloved corporate gods claimed they created rock video, allowing it to sink as low in 1 year as commercial TV has in 25. It's a new frontier, they say. It's wide open, anything can happen. But you got a lot of nerve to call yourself a pioneer when you're too goddamn conservative to take real chances. Tin-eared, graph paper-brained accountants instead of music fans. Of all the shots at giant record companies now, the lowest common denominator rules. Forget honesty, forget creativity, the dumbest buy the mostest, that's the name of the game. But sales are slumping, and no one will say why. Could it be they put out one too many lousy records? MTV, get off the air, now!
Your machine might slip on the air.
the bottom. The symbols of our heritage look proudly in the night, somehow fixed to see the homeless people passed out on the lawn. So this is where it happens, the power games and the pride of loving for a piece of ass and stars and stripes of corruption. Makes me feel so ashamed to be an American who's too stuck up to learn from our mistakes. Turn son of the Vietnam while fiddling while the burns at home. Boss says you're laid off from Japanese. America's back alright at the game that plays the worst, defining the world like state plantation. No wonder others hate us, and the Hitlers we handpicked to believe that people try for evil empire. Drugs were fed to make us like it. We started country with a bang. People we know should know better. How America rules, let's go to war. Business stamps are what's worth dying for. But I'm so involved enemy, we're throwing ourselves dead. Who cares about our civil rights as long as I get paid? A blind generation doesn't care if it lasts a lie. So easily use the Confederate voice of stars and stripes of corruption. Let's bring it all down. Let's bring it all down. Let's bring it all down, 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 down. Whoa! Tell me who's the real patriots? The Archie Bunker slobs waving flags, or the people with the guts to work for some real change? Rednecks and bombs don't make us strong. We loot the world and we can't even feed ourselves. Our real test of strength is tearing up the war toys to sell the world. Just carry on, thankful to be pawned like worms. Old glory for a blanket as you suck your thumbs. Real freedom scares you, that means responsibility. So you chicken out and threaten me, saying love it or leave it. I'll get beat up if I criticize it. You say you'll fight to the death to save your useless flag. You want a banana republic that bad? Why don't you go move to wood? But what can just one of us do against all that money and power trying to crush us into roaches? We won't destroy society in a day until we change ourselves first from the inside out. We can start by not lying so much and treating other people like dirt. It's so easy not to base our lives on how much we can stand. You know it feels good to lift that monkey up from there. They're gonna live in a place where they say the things to do without being taken out and shot. Swallow God and gets the goons trying to take my rights away. We've got to rise above the need for cops and laws. Let kids in communication instead of schools push competition about moron and theater instead of sports. Even though a few drugs, let's legalize them. Crime drops from the market present. Budgets in the red, let's tax feed the hitchon. No one will do it for us. We'll just have to fix ourselves. Honesty ain't all that hard. Just put Rambo back inside his pants. Causing trouble for the system's much more fun. Thank for the toilet paper, cause that's meaningless to me. Look around, we're all people who these countries anyway. Our land, I love it too. I think I love it more than you. I care enough to fight the stars and stripes of corruption. Let's bring it all down. Let's bring it all down. Let's bring it all down. If we don't try, if we just fly, if we can't find a way to do better than this, we will. April 15th, 1986.
tax day. And what a tax day it was. I was up in the attic part of this flat I used to rent. I used to go up the stairs and sleep up there and everything. And I heard this tromping up the stairs. Who could that be? Dun, 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 dun. We're police officers. Dun, 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 dun. What are you doing in my house? Dun, da, da, dun, da, dun, da, da. You are under suspicion of trafficking in harmful matter. Harmful matter? What's that? Can you imagine any matter more harmful than finding a cop in your bedroom? And then going on down the stairs into the main part of the place and finding it's not just one cop, not just two cops, not just three cops, not just four, not just five. 9 cops were busy tearing my whole flat to pieces. I felt like it was a DEA drug raid or something, or like I'd walked into one of them William Casey-inspired made-for-TV movies about how the KGB comes in and ransacks Sakharov's apartment and throws his stuff all over the place and runs off with his private mail. Well, there were 2 cops going through my address and phone book page by page, comparing names. I mean, if any of you ever sent me anything and I put you in my book, smile, you're on candid camera now. Since it wasn't just San Francisco cops who were tearing my house to pieces, 3 of the 9 cops were from Los Angeles. I mean, I don't think I have to tell you, they're one of the most violent police forces in America, if not the world. And I was asking, well, what is this harmful matter? Come on, what is this? If you kept me under surveillance half as good as I know you can, you'll know there ain't no drugs in my place. And you'll know there ain't no guns or Uzis under the bed, contrary to Governor George Deukmejian's report about how punk is a gang phenomenon. Anyway, so I find out that what it takes 9 cops to tear my whole house apart to find the booty, the harmful matter, is a record album. Frankenchrist by my old band Dead Kennedys. And inside that record album was a painting by Swiss surrealist master H.R. Giger. Anybody here not know who Giger is? The guy who won the Oscar for designing the set to Alien and designed the monsters. And he's better known in Europe than he is here. He's primarily a gallery artist, but he's designed album covers for Emerson, Lake and Palmer, the Brain Salad Surgery cover, Cuckoo by Deborah Harry. He's done one for Magma, done one for Celtic Frost. I mean, he's a recognized master, but they really wanted his ass. I mean, one of the LA guys was going, "Where's the guy who did this painting? Where is he? Where is he?" He's in Switzerland. I mean, I was scared for my life. I go into the kitchen wondering what's going on, and there's the other LA Vice guy pawing through these promotional copies of the records, some of the records he'd released on Alternative Tentacles. Finds one by the Butthole Surfers. Are you involved with them, too? This was interesting. This was scary. I mean, a 45-year-old LA Vice Squad narc who knew who the Butthole Surfers were. I mean, I don't think it would be because he had hip kids or something. I'm sure Back in Control could take care of that. Or could it be some of these cops have been stalking our whole underground scene for a long, long time? So I'm whisked back into the other part of the house where they're going through my mail and going through the address book, and really scared by this time. I mean, I hear the drawers opening and shutting upstairs, not knowing whether they're putting drugs in my clothes or planting a gun there so they say they shot me or self-defense or something like that. I'm plopped down in a chair with nothing but a bathrobe on. 2 LA cops are circling around me like sharks. There's one really big, mean one, the meanest one, this Robert Mitchum lookalike, this Robert Mitchum wannabe. I'll get about a year. Somebody shut this guy up so I don't have to listen to him. While the other one is playing good cop, saying, "Do you like being in a band? Do you make a lot of money?" You know, trying to coax information out of me, like who owns the car outside, who owns the building, things like that. Then in comes one of the San Francisco Vice narcs. He's got his Elliot Ness trench coat on and his pinstripes, the whole deal. Kind of an alarmed look on his face, though. He comes in. What are all those pictures of missing milk carton kids doing on your kitchen wall? Do you know where they are? I felt like saying, yeah, I'm John Wayne Gacy, and they're all buried downstairs. So finally, after 2.5 hours of this nonstop terror, and believe me, having that many cops just swarming around you, just waiting for any excuse to pound you or blow your way, it's a subtle form of rape, and boy, do they know it. After about 2.5 hours, they finally, between the 9 of them, they had what they wanted. 3 copies of the Frankenchrist album, 3 extra Giger posters, my private mail, and business ledgers, which they took and then didn't send back later, not even Xeroxes as required by law. And by that time, they'd also raided the Alternative Tentacles and Mordam Records, a little warehouse office space we had, and a couple of the cops were holding up DOA t-shirts showing themselves off, and one of them found the 4x6 chrome slide of the Giger painting we'd gotten from his agent in Switzerland. All right, we got it. This is the smoking gun. We've got it. We've got him now. Ah, ha, ha, ha. Forgot to take it with them. But nevertheless, 2 months later, June 2nd, 1986, the day before Election Day, I found out that me and 4 other people were all charged by the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office with 1 count each of distributing harmful matter to minors. I was charged, Ruth Schwartz from Maximum Rock and Roll and Mordam Records was charged, a guy who used to work at Alternative Tentacles and had quit by that time, but he was charged anyway. They charged a guy from Green World Distribution who wholesales to stores. They even charged a 67-year-old man whose crime against humanity was owning the record pressing plant that stamped out the vinyl and collated the discs. They even charged him. We were looking at a maximum year in jail, $2,000 fine because of what we said with a record album. This is America? We knew we had to fight. We knew we had to fight when Tipper Gore could barely contain her glee the next day on how, oh, this is exactly what we wanted. I'm not a censor, as she said so many times, but these people should be thrown in the can because they violated truth in packaging laws by not putting a Tipper sticker on their record and putting a sticker making fun of Tipper stickers as a warning sticker instead. The prosecuting attorney, deputy city attorney from LA, went on TV that night saying, we feel this is a cost-effective way of sending a message that we are going to prosecute. Cost-effective. Sending a message. What kind of message was he sending there? You know, cost-effective. He deliberately picked an independent who would have to pay out of their own pocket to defend themselves and probably get squashed like a roach to make an example out of instead of a high-budget PMRC target like, you know, one of the top of their hit list like Prince or Ozzy or something like that. They picked us. Plus sending a message to stores all over the country saying, hey, if you want to avoid trouble with the cops, blackball dead Kennedys, McCarthy style. Don't let anybody have any access to their records. That was the message being sent. We knew we had to fight. We didn't have the resources to do it. So we founded the No More Censorship Defense Fund to help raise the money for the necessary legal costs. Little did we know when we decided to defend ourselves and that we were feeling that we were innocent of any crime that would wind up taking 1.5 years out of our lives, wind up costing over $80,000 just to fight a $2,000 fine and a year in jail. So finally, in August 1987, We finally went to trial in Los Angeles, almost a year and a half after the initial police raid. Finally, the grand finale. Right kitty corner across the street from that courthouse where they have all the low-angle camera shots of on Perry Mason singling. Yes, the trial, where Perry just tears the prosecutor to shreds and all the witnesses reveal themselves to be backbiting snakes towards each other. And inevitably, 20 minutes later, one breaks down and confesses to the whole crime. Real trials don't work like that. Real trials take forever. The first week and a half alone was spent arguing over instructions to the jury. We had to sit in court watching people argue over a record album for 3 whole weeks. I mean, 3 weeks in Los Angeles is cruel and unusual enough punishment for anybody, if you ask me. So now let's meet the cast of characters. For the prosecution, New Right warrior Michael Guarino, who had said at one point that the First Amendment was a loophole. He's an open admirer of Ed Meese. One reporter told me he told her that this was different from the prosecution of William Burroughs over Naked Lunch because Burroughs was a respected author crying out against a repressive society. But now that society is no longer repressive, the Frankenchrist album is obscene. Another writer told me towards the end of the trial, this was the real shock, that Guarino's favorite recording artist was Patti Smith. And that if she had put the same Giger painting in with one of her records, it would not be obscene because Patti Smith was a gifted poet, but Dead Kennedys had no talent. He wasn't some farty old Jesse Helms type of guy either. This is the scariest part about these people is they're so young. They're going to be with us as long as we live. We'll have the power to put us away in nursing homes later. I mean, Guarino was like late 30s, early 40s, I would say, with blow-dried beetle hair and polyester suits and kind of these ghost shades like you might find on the walls of the Phoenix airport or something. Salmon pink ties, loafers. Weirdest thing about him was his sideburns. The way they kept changing color. First hearing, one judge, they're brown with a few flecks of gray. Next hearing, another judge, suddenly they've turned white. Next hearing, another judge for the trial, brown with flecks of gray again. Very interesting. My lawyer's name was Phil Schneerson. He was a noted criminal attorney in the San Francisco Bay Area who'd made a fairly lucrative living over the years doing criminal law, but felt that he could do this one for expenses and, as he put it, give something back to the profession. And he was real sick of people picking on the First Amendment and wanted to do something about it since he was in that position. I mean, later on, if you decide when you get real career conscious you want to make a lot of money and have the garage and the 2.3 children, at least try to remember this, that you can make a comfortable living and devote some time to the public interest as well. So that was what Phil was doing. And each of the 5 defendants had to have their own separate criminal lawyer, because under American legal etiquette, you can't have one lawyer defending 2 people who each say the other did it. Wouldn't work that way. Plus, we had a 6th lawyer from the American Civil Liberties Union who was playing watchdog, watching for constitutional issues to be raised on an appeal later if we got convicted. The ACLU doesn't get the kind of money that people like Jimmy Swaggart or the PMRC get. They're a publicly funded organization that needs your help, who specialize in constitutional law. Lawyers are like doctors now. You've got your constitutional law, entertainment law, probate law, business law, criminal law, sports law, all different kinds. They don't really keep track of how the other ones work, so we had to have all these specialists, and that's why we needed 6 lawyers. So for the first week and a half, all 6 of them went at each other, arguing over instructions to the jury. You'd think that would be real simple. It was only about a 3-sentence law on the books, Section 313.1 of the California State Penal Code, distributing harmful matter to minors. Matter is determined to be harmful if it is deemed obscene as to minors by the average adult Californian using contemporary community standards. In other words, be average and contemporary or be busted. And plus, the prosecutor had to prove that it appealed to the prurient interest. One of my favorite words, the prurient interest. You know, that means if you look at something and you want to beat off to it, that appeals to your prurient interest, and that's illegal. That's verboten. I mean, for any of you who've actually seen that Giger painting, did that make you want to beat off? I mean, I can't imagine anybody being sexually aroused by that painting unless they were like a cop or an LA city attorney or something like that. That Giger painting will sure get you if you look at it. I mean, it's not a pretty picture. It's, I mean, that's what I like in art sometimes. Something inspires you to think, even if it's not something you necessarily like to look at or hear, or something like that. I mean, to me, that's not an exploitation picture. It's an anti-exploitation picture because it's so gross. To me, there it was. Consumer culture on parade. A society, America, bent on screwing each other in more ways than one. That, to me, was also what the Frankenchrist album was saying in the words. So after about a week and a half of arguing over the jury instructions, the poor jury wound up receiving about 60 pages of instructions on what an average adult Californian was and what contemporary community standards were and what the prurient interest meant. But it was worth it to argue over every and or and but and get real nitpicky in all the language and all those pages, because as a result, we got them tightened up enough that they had to drop charges against the 67-year-old man who ran the record pressing plant. Although by that time, for whatever reasons, his health had deteriorated to the point where he was physically unable to attend the trial. A day later, charges were also dropped against Steve Boudreau of Green World Distribution, the wholesaler who sold the record to the store. A lot of good that's going to do him now that Green World has gone bankrupt. So then it was time to argue over admissibility of evidence. And finally, the entertainment had begun. Does anybody have a pen I can borrow? Anybody have a pen? No, don't throw 20 at me. One will do. I can't imitate Michael Guarino properly without a pen open and cocked between the index and middle finger, always kind of poking at you, right at eye level when he talks to you, kind of like a little claw or something, poking at you with his pen. And the smoking gun Guarino thought he had to get admitted into evidence was this handwritten list I'd been keeping of the different records we'd put out on Alternative Tentacles, title, artist, serial number. With the serial numbers, we had them Virus 1, Virus 2, Virus 3, etc.
Now, one would think, Your Honor, that it would be important to show the jury how these people deliberately disseminate material they know is offensive to the public taste with bands with names like the Crucifix and the Butthole Surfers, and look at these titles: Plastic Surgery Disasters, War on 45, Nazi Punks Off.
And then there was one title where he was so moral he wasn't going to say it aloud in court. Never mind, he used every four-letter word in the book with his assistant at the trial, who, just my luck, was Officer Friendly, the same Robert Mitchum wannabe who'd scared the living daylights out of me during the raid. I got to sit a few feet away from him for 3 weeks. Never mind that he used foul language with Officer Friendly when the judge was out of the room, or more importantly, when the press was out of the room. Keep in mind, this is a guy who was so moral, he was going to save America's children from wicked Giger paintings and rock records by circulating airbrushed photos of himself to the local media. Anyway, he brings the virus list up to the judge, like a kid bringing a paper to the teacher or something. Judge looks at it. Everybody except Guarino is kind of snickering by now as he takes the list back. Even the cop is starting to laugh a little bit, and Phil Schneerson finally asks, well, what's the problem? Is that song a little too close to home? Too drunk to fuck? Well, finally, we got enough evidence thrown out that charges were dropped against Ruth Schwartz of Maximum Rock and Roll and Mordam Records, the sub-distributor who sold the record to Greenworld. But the judge had proven alarmingly tight-wadded toward letting us use any kind of evidence in court that could show this was a politically motivated trial and that there were outside forces at work here. We couldn't use any of the statements Tipper Gore had made about us or any of the TV preachers had said about us being devil worshippers, or we couldn't use the fact that the LA City Attorney's press release that came out the day before Election Day described the Giger poster and its objections almost word for word the same way Susan Baker of the PMRC had described it to Variety magazine a couple months earlier. And we couldn't even use the pattern of LAPD harassment against dead Kennedys when we tried to play live in the Los Angeles area. I mean, was anybody at the Wilmington show? I mean, a show in Wilmington, which theoretically would be outside the Los Angeles police's jurisdiction, there they were anyway, with helicopters, tear gas, beating the living daylights out of a lot of the people who went to the show, who had to run out all one exit where they had to run a gauntlet of cops all swinging nightsticks at their heads. We thought our drummer's shoulder was broken after the gig, but it was just a carefully planted socket bruise. Cops in riot gear were seen running up and down the streets, smashing in windshields to cars and the windows to small businesses. They claim they all rushed down after getting a phoned-in complaint, yet Ray, our old guitar player, knew a woman who worked in a local hospital there who had told him that an LAPD official had been there at 4:30 in the afternoon saying, you better have some extra people in your emergency ward tonight, there's going to be some casualties. We couldn't bring any of this into court. Then, finally, they bring in a prospective jury. If anybody's been called to jury duty, you know how excruciatingly boring this can be, where they'll bring in like a group of 25 people, or in our case, 50 prospective jurors, draw 12 names out of a lottery, put them in the jury box, 2 more in the alternate jurors' chairs in case one juror gets sick, they have one of the alternates step in, and they start asking them all kinds of questions. Are you married? How many kids do you have? Where do you live? Have your kids had any run-ins with the police? Or what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Goes on forever, asking them more and more questions, trying to figure out whether they're going to show any bias for or against the prosecution or defense. And you know how they say they want you tried by a random selection of your peers? Well, we got a pretty widespread selection of our peers. The first 2 people actually knew a bit about music, a bit about punk rock even. Well, they both heard of Dead Kennedys. One of them, I think, had seen Black Flag and even mentioned the Germs. On the other hand, a couple chairs down, there was an older woman. Phil Schneerson was questioning her. Well, do you ever listen to any music? Well, I play the organ, but not in church. Didn't get any better. Down in juror number 7's chair, in a gray suit, was an egg. With another egg on top for a head and a disproportionately little mouth with this mustache wrapped around it for an overall effect like a parrotfish. He sort of cocked his head to one side and, I have an art background. I know a bit about art. I ran a playhouse in Detroit, directed plays, I've acted. Things are looking up now that I've moved to Los Angeles. I've been in a 7-Eleven commercial. But I turn the radio off whenever that song, I Want Your Sex by George Michael comes on. I don't want my daughter to hear that. And I'm going, oh no. An articulate guy with an art background who's conservative as hell. Oh boy. Then it was our turn to question the jurors, and I was going, okay, go after that one. Go after the church lady. Go after that 75-year-old man who still works for Lockheed. He must be crazy. Go after them. Go after them. So instead, what do? They go after the punk rock people. Grilling them with all these questions, and all these things start getting let out of the bag that I wasn't sure I wanted the rest of the prospective jurors to hear, like, juror number 2, what does punk mean to you? Anarchy? Gee, thanks. Phil was unfazed. What does anarchy mean to you? Well, it means concerned young people who want to do something about our apathetic society. Okay, now I understand. Now I know where they're grilling the punk rock people. The judge never would have let us get that out of a witness on a witness stand. It wasn't admissible as evidence. But you could sure as hell ask a prospective juror things like, have you ever heard of the PMRC? What do you think of the Mies Commission report? Has your church ever held any discussions or seminars on censorship? We even had one gift from above plopped into the second alternate juror's chair. He didn't even make it past the judge's questions, but boy was he helpful. Judge asked him, well, is there any reason you can't serve as an impartial member of this jury? Yeah, all cops are liars. And why do you believe this to be true, sir? Well, I was put on trial in this courthouse once, and the cop lied on the witness stand, and I was convicted, and then he told me afterwards, well, that's the way the game's played. Judge, out! But all the rest of the prospective jurors heard that. So then it was time to start getting rid of the jurors. The prosecutor will kick one off, we'll kick one off. Nobody has to cite a reason. They just kick out the ones that they don't want on the jury. And then every time somebody new gets drawn out and plopped in one of the jurors' chairs and asked all those questions, it can go on for weeks. And so the prosecutor is supposed to go first, and Guarino says, prosecution's satisfied with the jury. What? I don't get it. Okay, guys, never mind. I don't understand why they're doing that. Kick off the church lady, kick off 7-Eleven, kick off that one. She gives me the creeps, man. Get rid of them all, man. They all give me the creeps. They're saying, no, don't you understand what he's doing? He's trying to pass every time he can, so we use our allotment of 10 jurors we can kick off before he does, so he can put anybody he wants on at the end. But we can solve that. Okay, defense is satisfied with the jury too. Ha ha. So the mixed bag was in the jury box, and finally, after over 2.5 weeks, it was time to call the first witness. The one Guarino so melodramatically referred to as the victim, the little girl. And she didn't look like a little girl to me. She was 16, looked maybe 19. She got up and sat in kind of a pantyhurst monotone, talking about how she'd bought the record at a chain store, the warehouse store in the Northridge shopping mall, and brought it home. And then her mom testified how for some reason they opened their little brother's Christmas present before Christmas, and for some reason reached in and went straight for the Giger poster. And then for some reason, instead of taking it back from the store and getting another record, they sent it to the state attorney general's office, who then sent it back to the LA City Attorney's Office. Merry Christmas. Have you noticed there's a missing link in the chain here? They didn't charge the record store. I mean, Guarino justified this to the press saying, well, they were cooperative and took dead Kennedys off the shelves. Remember sending a message? You remember Joe McCarthy and people like that sending a message? Well, it looks like the record store took that message pretty well. They were part of the Warehouse chain, the largest retail chain in California. They didn't just ban Frankenchrist from the one store in the Northridge shopping mall. They banned every record we've ever made from all their stores permanently. Anyway, we also discovered something else interesting, that our case was only one of about half a dozen designed to bend the law. kind of like Robert Bork style, bend the law so that anybody, anywhere in the distribution chain, could be prosecuted for obscenity to the full extent of the law. Up until now, the Supreme Court has only upheld hands-on distributors, the people at the cash register who sell Hustler to a 17-year-old, or somebody in a southern town who shows a blue movie or something like that. They can get convicted, but the way they want to set it up now, anybody who gets within sniffing distance can get convicted. There's even one case still pending, I believe, against a movie called Backside to the Future that the LA District Attorney, Ira Reiner, is prosecuting, where they've charged all the actors, all the actresses, the director, the producer, a modeling agent, and even a guy who only loaned out his house for one day of the whole shooting schedule to be used as a set. They're all charged under a felony obscenity statute, which means if any of them are convicted, it's a mandatory 3-year sentence in the California State Pen. And if any of them get convicted, how easy is it going to be to assemble a crew to make a movie that might be controversial years later? If somebody runs out and gets coffee for the director, might get busted and put away for 3 years? How can I go into a recording studio and make another music album if they're all afraid to work with me because they might get busted? This is what the Democrats in the LA City Attorney and District Attorney's offices have in mind for the rest of us. And just my luck, next up on the witness stand was guess who? Dun-da-da, dun-da-dun-da-da. Yep, Officer Friendly, the Robert Mitchum wannabe, my favorite policeman. How many police officers were present during the raid on Biafra's home and the Alternative Tentacles warehouse space? Just me and my partner. Yeah. And if you ask me, that seemed to me about the closest thing to an accurate statement he made all afternoon. He tried to paint this picture whereby I'd welcomed them into the house even though they busted the window by the front door and let themselves in. And how I was saying, oh, ha, 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 oh yeah, it must be that Giger poster you're here for. Oh, I knew how obscene that was. It's so wicked and corrupts little kids. Big joke, right? Ha, 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 ha. Yeah, right. I mean, that broke my heart. That didn't just make me mad, that broke my heart. I mean, as you might guess, I have kind of a cynical view of the way our world is run. But to see an officer of the law, an officer of the public trust, sit there and lie on a witness stand for 2.5 hours, that broke my heart. Next day, it was time to present our defense. Now, how do you defend something like that? That album, that picture. I mean, we could have called up the Dead Kennedys fans saying, oh yeah, they're really cool, man. They're radical. Man, they saved my life. I was gonna go shoot myself in the head after listening to Ozzy Osbourne, but they showed me the way, man. Let them off. They're cool. Let them off. I don't think that would have worked. Not for the 7-Eleven guy, not for the church lady. I don't think it would have worked either to bring me up on the witness stand to sit there going, I am not a crook. Frankly, I'm innocent. That wouldn't have worked either. So we went the expert witness route, starting with Joan Weinstein, an art historian from the University of Pittsburgh who was on loan to UCLA. She told the jury a little bit about surrealist art and Picasso, Dali, Giger, why they painted the way they did, the origins, why their paintings could be interpreted different ways by different people, example being the Giger painting in question. And to prove her point, this was kind of funny in a way, watching a college professor sitting there intellectualizing on the connections between the Giger painting and pointing to a big blow-up of the Frankenchrist lyric sheet that was sitting by the jury box, pointing with a pointer to MTV-Get Off the Air, Soup is Good Food, while the jurors were sitting there with their own Frankenchrist lyric sheets, studiously following the bouncing ball. They had something else in their possession by that time, too, because we'd gotten word earlier that Guarino had been mouthing off to the press about how he was going to withhold the actual Giger poster from the jury until the very last possible minute, since he knew we wouldn't want him to see it, and then build up the suspense Hitchcock style so you know you're going to get scared, and then open up and flash the Giger poster. Oh, we're scared! Oh, it's so obscene! Oh, it's so evil! Oh, Tipper Gore was right! Throw him in jail! Boil him in Tipperware! Oh! So Phil started out the day, Well, now, jury, you're probably wondering what all this fuss is about, right? Jury, exasperated. Right. Here, have a poster. You can each have a poster. And here's a lyric sheet so you can understand why that would be in an album to begin with. You can take it home, you can keep it afterwards, you can even have the record and the cover at the end of the trial if you would like it. And so then on cross-examination of Joan Weinstein, Guarino just went wild. He stormed up armed to the teeth with all these collector books of Giger's art that some people would pay hundreds of dollars to obtain. Open them up.
All right, isn't this painting sick? Isn't this painting obscene? Isn't this painting sick? Don't you think Giger is obsessed with sex with the dead? Isn't this painting sexually explicit? Isn't this sick? Isn't this sick? Don't you think this is sick? Don't you think this is sick?
I mean, I just thought, woo, this guy is obsessed. Poking holes in a beautiful Giger book with that pen of his. Well, you know, in a way, that's kind of cool. Here was a guy who was one of the worst examples I've ever seen of what happens when someone with no sense of humor is allowed to have too much power. And he had to eat, sleep, and dream H.R. Giger's paintings and Dead Kennedy's songs for a whole year and a half. Next witness didn't fare much better. Next up was Greil Marcus, the rock writer and historian. Guarino tried to throw him off, saying a rock writer couldn't talk about art, tried to throw Joan Weinstein off because an art expert couldn't possibly talk about music, but the judge ruled against him, so he was huffing and puffing, getting madder and madder, starting to turn red at this point. He brings a Giger poster up to Greil Marcus. He'd been playing this game with Greil where he was saying things like, all right, if you say blah, 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 doesn't that mean blah, 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 blah? No, I didn't even say that. I said blah, 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 blah. Greil Marcus was cool as a cucumber. He'd been in that hot seat before. So finally, Guarino shoves the Giger poster in his face. All right, don't you think this poster is 100% sexually explicit? No. All right, then. You go over this poster inch by inch, and you tell me what percentage is sexually explicit and what percentage is not sexually explicit. We'd had enough. We were all ready to go, objection, Your Honor. We'd been holding our tongue about the objections because we didn't want the jury to think we were trying to hide something or that we were too whiny, or we wanted them to see as much of the Guarino we knew as possible, but that one we couldn't let go. And finally, Gary Mandonak reaches around, and he was Ruth Schwartz's attorney who stayed on to help Phil with my defense that Phil, don't object yet, don't object yet. Look at the jury box, look at the church lady, look at the church lady. Up and down, inch by inch, examining the Giger poster. I had to not laugh. Through this whole trial, I had to sit there as a generic defendant in a suit and a tie and a little preppy hairdo, trying to look as innocent as possible, not show any emotion which might give me away to the jury. They were perpendicular to me, so I couldn't really watch them very much without leering at them and coming off like Theodore Bundy or something, which didn't want that to happen. I didn't want them to see the sweat start forming in my suit jacket itself when they first got their Giger posters. They opened them up and I'm going, oh no, here goes. And they were looking at it, oh, this is pretty surreal. This is pretty oh, we have it upside down. Next witness was Dennis Erickson, the publisher of BAM magazine. Guarino tore his head off too, brings up the Giger poster again. All right, if this is not 10 erect penises going into 10 rotting vaginal cavities, then what is it? I don't know. To me, it just looks like a bunch of big balls of mud. And on that note, testimony ended for the day. Next day, we were supposed to have more expert witnesses, but we figured the jury had tired of expert witnesses by now, plus we had a little surprise. Guarino was ready to rip apart more expert witnesses and hopefully get a chance at me. He had a bigger fanzine collection with interviews of me in it than probably I've ever seen anywhere. So Phil stands up, defense rests. What? Joe's not going to testify? What? He had 10 minutes to prepare his closing argument. So instead, a temper tantrum was in order again. This time he stormed around the room. Giger is a Richard Ramirez of art. You know, the Night Stalker murderer. And these people should be seen in the same light. Don't be fooled by the fact that Mr. Jello Biafra appears to be nicely dressed, or smiling Bonanno over here. And don't be fooled by the fact that their lawyers appear to be friendlier than I am. Finally, he couldn't restrain himself. He had to do it anyway. He whips out the Giger poster and flails it around the courtroom for all to see, thus exposing its contents to at least 15 minors in the courtroom gallery. Jury went off to deliberate for the rest of that day after we gave them a quick reminder about what the U.S. Constitution was intended for in the first place, and then next day they came back to deliberate some more. There is something even more boring and long-winded than being called to jury duty or how long his talk has become, and that is waiting for the jury to come back with a verdict. You can't leave. I tried to do that, and the bailiff stopped me. Just my luck, his name was Kennedy. There's nothing going on in court. The judge may be in her chambers or something, so we just had to wait and wait and wait. But I wanted a long wait and a way. Phil had told me that after about 2.5 hours, if a jury comes back that quick, it's usually curtains for the defense. But after 4 hours or so, maybe somebody in there is fighting for some principles. 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours later, no jury. Finally, a note comes back from the jury room. What is it? The jury would like a record player. Oh no. Oh no. What have I done? I knew this was gonna hang me in the end. Why did I crank the guitars that loud in the mix? Why didn't I listen to all those jive asses in the satin baseball jackets from the big record company who said, oh sure, we'll sign you up, Dead Kennedys. We'll give you all the artistic control you want if you'll just change your name. Why didn't I listen to reason? Sure enough, an hour and a half later, out they came, and they didn't look too happy. You could almost see the smoke coming out of their ears. And the judge asked them, well, have you made any progress? It's been over a day now. They could only agree on about one thing, that they were hopelessly deadlocked 7-5 in favor of acquittal. But that doesn't get you off the hook in an American criminal trial. The jury has to agree unanimously, guilty or not guilty. But if they get deadlocked like that, it's called a hung jury, where a judge declares a mistrial, and the prosecutor can refile and drag you through the whole thing all over again. Guarino, of course, filed a motion for a new trial. He could hardly wait. But thankfully, Judge Susan Isaacoff said, well, we've seen enough experimenting with the law in this courtroom for this trial. Charges dropped, case dismissed. But did we win? No. Did we win? Well, yes, battle but not the war. The war is getting worse by the day. Watch for what the religious right tries to do to your schools. Watch for them trying to shut down cool record stores or cool college radio stations. And as Frank Zappa puts it, don't let them govern by telling people what they don't like. Go out and tell them what you do like. Support these people. At the very least, why give the PMRC sponsors your money? There's more I'd go into, but we're out of time. Thanks for coming. Thanks to Bogarts for letting us go this long. Pleasant dreams.